Welcome to the Dark Nook Monster Shop. I recently picked up some doll head molds on Amazon and started experimenting with how well foam clay works with silicone and rubber molds. I decided to use these molds to create some creepy fairy creatures using mini skeletons from the dollar store. To start, I pressed foam clay into the molds and then popped off the skeleton heads and pushed them into the molds. Then I shaped the clay around the back of the skull. It worked, mostly, but I keep running into the same issue when I'm trying to use these molds, and that's foam clay really needs direct contact with air to effectively dry. Thankfully, it did eventually dry enough for me to pop it out of the mold. Luckily, I was planning to mess up the face anyway, so it didn't really matter. I carved away the soft foam clay to reveal the parts of the skull underneath. Next, I add more detail to the face and then smooth it out with water. The other head still hadn't dried enough, so I used a heat gun to help it along. And while that dried, I worked on the armature to make the skeleton more posable. I added wire along the shoulders and arms, and then another piece for the back and legs. Once the wire was in place, I used hot glue to attach it to the skeleton. This allowed me to bend and position the arms and legs however I wanted. Thanks for watching my video. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. I use a lot of the same materials from video to video, but if you'd like me to include a materials list in the description, please let me know in the comments down below. After that, I cut the skeleton apart at its joints to position it in a more lifelike pose. Then I glue it securely to the armature with hot glue. This not only improves the pose and the look of the skeleton overall, but it makes the structure much stronger and more durable. I put a brown base coat down on the skeleton to hide the armature, and I added in some Mod Podge which will help the foam stick better. I paint the heads using the same Mod Podge and red paint mixture. Then I sponge on some flat, bone white paint to bring back the skeleton color. This helps make the armature wire nearly invisible. Using that same bone white paint, I highlight the skull's bone details. To create some wings for my creepy little fairies, I crumpled up aluminum foil and then smoothed it back out, and scored some lines to add texture, then coated the foil with Mod Podge, brushed it around, and layered tissue paper over it. Then I shape that into wings using the brush. Then I add some more tissue and more Mod Podge as necessary to get the shape and thickness to the wings that I want. For the second set of wings, instead of tissue, I used cotton wool. Once dry, I peel the wings off the foil, which turns out to be super satisfying. I reinforce the wings with wire for added support, securing it with glue and some more cotton wool. Then I paint over that with more Mod Podge. When I realized the wings were a little too large for what I was trying to do, I trimmed them down to a better size. Next, I started sculpting. Using foam clay, I covered the skeleton's legs and chest and other areas where I wanted there to be skin. I plan out where I want there to be holes and rotted areas. The foam clay holds its shape well, and after about 10 minutes it becomes firm enough that you can really sculpt some detail into it. For texture, I use a custom-made texture stamp. Fun fact, 25 years ago, I accidentally spilled some silicone on some polyfoam scraps. When the silicone dried, I peeled it off my desk to throw it away and discovered that the texture from the foam was really great. So I cut out the best pieces and they've been a part of my toolbox ever since. When the clay firms up, I add more detail, working in stages. Step 1 is just coverage. Step 2 is shaping. And finally, step 3 is texture and detail. Now, with a good texture stamp, you can get texture and shape in the same step. Now I worked on 2 skeletons at the same time to improve my chances of getting some good footage where at least one was in frame and in focus at the same time. And once everything's sculpted, I smooth the surface over with some water and leave it to dry. Now it's time for paint. I paint the bodies red using the same Mod Podge mixture that I used for the heads. And once that's all dry, now it's time to reattach the heads. One pops right back into place, but the other needed some hot glue to hold it down. I do a little test fit on the wings to see how they look, and they fit perfectly. So now I paint them with a yellow wash and dab off the excess with a dry paper towel. Then I go over that with a white dry brush. I apply the same yellow wash that I used on the wings to the decayed areas and holes in the body. I follow that up with a light purple that dries a lot darker than it looks here. And once that dries, I apply a medium beige for the skin tone. And then a brown wash over everything that ties it together. The body, the face, the wings, all of it. Once that's dried, I do some really great painting just out of frame. And then I paint eye detail on the other fairy out of focus. So, yeah. Once that's done, I go over it with a deep red Mod Podge mix for bloody accents, all around the inside edges of the wounds and the rotted parts, and around the eyes and the face. Now this mix is mostly Mod Podge, so it dries a lot darker than it looks here, and stays nice and shiny. Now for hair, I unraveled some light tan yarn, and then I glue it on using hot glue. But I make a point of really smooshing the hair into the hot glue so you can't see the glue and it doesn't look like it's glued down. And once that's all done, I put a little bit of the dirty water from my paintbrush cleaning jar in the hair, just to muck it up a bit, make it look a bit dirty. Finally, I attach the wings with a lot of hot glue. And once that glue cools, that's the zombie fairies complete. Enjoy these beauty shots. If you like this video, you might like one of these videos too. Or click on my zombie face to subscribe. And thanks for watching my video.